Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, December 11th, 2020, and today the Supreme Court rejected the Texas lawsuit seeking to subvert the election process right here from the New York Times, reported on about maybe 2 hours ago. And I think it's important to tell you guys about what this case actually wanted to do. Now, I'm not entirely sure if everyone watching knows exactly what happened, but essentially the Texas Attorney General pretty much filed a suit to sue practically the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Now, what he wanted to do was pretty much just argue to the Supreme Court that these four states in particular did not follow their state law in terms of handling the presidential election. There was a discussion about the fact that some of the laws changed right up to the election. We're talking late October, but these changes were done by Republicans. None of these changes were done by the Democratic Party. So that made it difficult, number one, that the Texas Attorney General was trying to argue that Republicans in these state legislatures really were the ones trying to change the law and subvert the election process itself. That didn't fly well. The Supreme Court pretty much said, with no dissents, meaning no one really said otherwise, that this court case had to be thrown out, that they were not even going to hear it. I believe Justice Alito and Justice Thomas said that they would allow it to be filed, but that was it. That's all they were going to offer to this Texas case. So looking at this, what could actually have happened? The thing was, if they had argued correctly, and if this had gone through the United States Supreme Court and they had ruled that they were right, and some people were afraid of this process, and I'll talk about why they were afraid in just a moment. But if this was to happen, they were essentially asking the Texas Attorney General, combined with many other states, including Florida, 19 states in total, added on to this, 22 states backed the battleground states that are being discussed. Attorney generals from all four states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, went against this lawsuit. So when you're looking at these four states in particular, essentially they were asking the Supreme Court to throw out these tens of millions of votes and asking that the state legislatures were allowed to overturn the election results. Why? They said because these states did not follow their rules, the state legislature should be allowed to appoint electors to vote on the Electoral College on Monday. And now it's thrown out. There is nothing that can happen. And since this case got thrown out, this prevents future states from trying to pull the same exact thing. They have 3 days to try to get as many faithless electors as they can. Spoiler alert, they're not going to get any of them. But that is the only type of, last minute effort out of the 90 they have already tried. So if that was actually the case, though, we actually would have seen President Trump elected if the state legislatures were able to appoint electors. But actually, some of the state legislature leaders, the Senate leaders, the legislative leaders in these respective states have said they wouldn't appoint Trump electors. Michigan, number one GOP guy on the state legislature side, I believe the Senate majority leader in that state Senate, said that he would not seat Republican electors or send Republican electors to the Electoral College because the state decided that Joe Biden was to be the next president of the United States. So this is a major blow for the Trump campaign. Major, major, major blow. States that were decided by very minimal amounts. The Supreme Court is now saying absolutely not. They are saying, without a doubt, even though President Trump appointed 3 out of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court, they are still telling him no. Amy Coney Barrett is saying no. Brett Kavanaugh is saying no. Pretty much all the conservatives on the Supreme Court are saying no to President Trump. And I think that's one of the biggest blows to the Trump campaign, given that he was probably relying on it. In fact, I don't know if we all remember this, but he mentioned that he believed the election was going to end up in the courts somehow, some way after the election. And he said it was important to seat 9 justices in the event that occurs. Well, first things first, he was attacked for that because Scalia was not replaced until after the election. So there were 8 justices on the Supreme Court. But this time they seated Amy Coney Barrett, but she still did not agree with President Trump. And that's the thing about these lifetime positions. You don't have to respond to anyone at this point. You were appointed and now you're in for life. It doesn't matter. And now the Supreme Court is upholding the election legitimacy that we have seen attacked time and time again from members on the right wing. And I think that it's actually very unfortunate that many Republicans, 126 House Republicans, including Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. This seems like a last-ditch effort for him to try to save the speakership if he's able to win in 2022, if the Republicans are able to win in 2022. Because, to be honest, it's probably not going to be him. He's not all inspirational, and he's definitely not a Paul Ryan. So Kevin McCarthy definitely trying to rile up the Trump base, get that support amongst the Republican Party. 126 House Republicans signing onto this brief in support of the motion. That's insane. We have 126 House Republicans who were just shut down by the Supreme Court. Now, they didn't release a vote, but we can assume it was 9-0, given that they didn't have any dissensions. But looking at this many House Republicans saying they were okay with this, including 19 Republican attorney generals, I think that is a really bad sign, I would say, for the legitimacy of our elections, just because people aren't going to trust the election results. Now, with this court movement, we've actually seen the right-wing pivot away from discussing the Supreme Court. Now, everyone was saying it's going to go to the courts, but we've actually seen some people give it up. They've said, you know what, at this point, it's not moving forward. The Electoral College votes in 3 days. How long can we actually have? We being, in this case, referring to we as the Trump wing of the Republican Party. The election is over. This result is finalized. As soon as every state was getting certified, Rudy Giuliani, President Trump, all of those Republican surrogates were saying, we're going to go to the court. We're going to go to the court. President Trump said this would be a major win, a win for America. In fact, today actually referred to the Biden administration in the coming years and then backtracked it and said if he is to win this election. But he's already won. And the Supreme Court is now certifying those results, essentially. They are telling us that Joe Biden has won the election, and they are not going to step in. The Supreme Court is telling us, because they are throwing out this case, that they do not see evidence of voter fraud. They do not see any state law violations. They see nothing. Their exact words, actually, we can go ahead and see what they said. But let's go ahead and find it right here so I can read it to you. It should be on the New York Times article, actually, but essentially they just threw out the court case. They said that the Texas case lacks standing to pursue the court, saying it, quote, has not demonstrated a judicially cognizable interest in the manner in which another state conducts its elections. And when you're actually looking at the case that was pretty much brought up to the Supreme Court, what they were asserting was that these states were not following election rules. They were telling the states that ran the elections they were not following their own rules, that they were violating somehow the Constitution. Obviously, without merit. Obviously, nothing happened. The Supreme Court has said absolutely not. And now that they're shooting it down, it shoots down President Trump with any type of idea that he could actually win the election at this point. The Supreme Court was the, end-all be-all for the Republican Party. This was where President Trump had the most influence. He didn't really have much influence over those Georgia Republicans once he attacked them. He didn't have much influence over the Democratic statewide officials in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. He didn't have much influence over the Arizona Republicans after he attacked them. Some of them still sided with him. Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue quickly turned on Brian Kemp, quickly turned on Brad Raffensperger. Kelly Ward quickly turned on Governor Doug Ducey. A lot of Republicans in those states still sided with President Trump. But those statewide officials that made all the difference stuck with their election results and said, you know what, our race is done. And then everyone was saying it's going to go to the courts. Forget the certification. Forget what the electors are going to say. Forget what the state legislatures do at this point. The Supreme Court will save us, right? President Trump appointed one out of the three justices, every one out of three justices on the Supreme Court. 33% were appointed by one president. One president. Think about that. One president. And they still, not only were they not loyal, they shot him down intentionally. This, non-dissension court case is essentially telling Republicans and Democrats and independents, everyone around America, that this election is over. They're telling us that Texas provided absolutely nothing. With over half of the House Republicans, 55% of them, signing on to this, saying, we support it, shot them down. 19 attorney generals in a number of states, even notable states such as Florida, shot them down. They don't support it. They are now telling us that the election is over. They are not going to interject the same way they did in the year 2000, which was an entirely different issue. And President Trump gave us somewhat of a concession today by addressing the Biden administration for the next few years. That's the only thing we really got from him. But other than that, President Trump has still refused to concede the election results. But with this Texas case, there is not a single pathway that could even occur in order for President Trump to win re-election. Some people were worried about this Supreme Court case. A lot of us knew nothing would come of it because there was absolutely no evidence. And notice how the voter fraud situation is only a media play. Whenever these Trump cases get to court, all of them, the ones where they're 50-1 in the United States, not Supreme Court, in the United States courts, they never bring up voter fraud. They never allege that there was voter fraud. They allege that ballots were filled out incorrectly, that signatures didn't match, that signatures were signed with, a pink pen versus a black pen, and therefore it shouldn't be counted. And they also argue that cured ballots should not count. And if the state reaches out to you and asks you, did you vote? Is this your signature? And you say yes, well, then your ballot is cured and your vote counts. I mean, that's the way to ensure that democracy actually occurs correctly. You shouldn't throw out someone's vote because a signature looks slightly off when you have a very easy way of contacting them. You know, that's democracy in a nutshell. We have to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. And it doesn't really matter most of the time for a lot of these politicians if they agree or disagree with you. But what we've seen now is President Trump has consistently tried to delegitimize the election results. And he was constantly saying, you know, throughout the election season, even before this even occurred, that they're going to go to the courts. And he hopes the courts rule in his favor. Well, guess what? They haven't. And they're telling him now, and they're telling Republicans, they're telling the 126 Republicans in the House, they're telling the 19 Republican attorney generals that there was nothing wrong in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, that there was nothing wrong in all of these electoral votes. You know, the 10, 16 in Michigan, 20 in Pennsylvania, 16 in Georgia. Think about how much that actually is. That could have impacted the election results. And if you were thinking about it at surface level, you may think that some of these Republicans felt as if they were obligated to President Trump, those who were appointed by him, who he pushed through the United States Senate, specifically Amy Coney Barrett, who hasn't ruled on this, you know, favorably towards President Trump. 62 total electoral votes. But I remind you what that would have done to the electoral map if the Republican legislatures were able to do that. But the Republican legislatures in some states have already said no. The Republicans in some of these states, the governors, have already said no. The attorney generals, the Democrats in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have already said no. And now the Supreme Court adds on to it. The Supreme Court rules that President Trump's case really, well, the Texas attorney general's case, doesn't make sense. You know, they provided nothing. There is no evidence that these states violated their own laws in terms of how they handle national elections, which means that this election, which has been over, I can't even count how many times now, is over for another time. And this time might actually be the last time, because it was always going to be the courts. It was always going to be the Supreme Court. But as we've seen throughout the entire last month, nothing working for the Trump campaign. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post 2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.